Ray, welcome to Millionaire University. Stoked to have you here today. It is so ironic that we're actually having this conversation because I just came off of another interview where I addressed, like, we haven't really talked to a lot of people about education and like this new direction that education is headed. We were talking about marketing those programs and all of that and how that's shifted. So it's kind of cool. We'll maybe have to like put a note to our editor, air this one before that one, because this will set us up for that.
Absolutely.
So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kirsten. Great to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So you have an extensive background. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've built multiple businesses, sold different businesses. Why don't you give us just a little synopsis of kind of what led you to what you're doing now, where this passion is all in productized education?
Absolutely. So I wish I could tell you that 20 years ago when I started, and I feel very old saying that I've been in this industry for 20 years now. But when I started, I wish I could tell you I had this master plan where, like, yes, this was my vision. This was where you're going to be in 20 years. That actually was not the case. Right. So basically, I worked in corporate America. I was a computer programmer. I did that for about 4 or 5 years. After university, worked at Fortune 500, Silicon Valley, all that kind of stuff. Quote unquote, what we're supposed to do after college, right? Kind of go and get a good job and then work there for the next 30, 40, 50 years, however long people work there. I did it 5 years and I kind of had this feeling that something was missing. And it was a series of events that led me to change my life. They happened about 72 hours. First was I was at a bar with some friends on Halloween in Cleveland, Ohio, drunk. So you tend to be in your like 24, 25 at that time, right? And I remember looking out over the crowd and I knew some of the people in there were 5 or 10 years older than I was. And I remember thinking to myself in the drunken haze, I don't want to be here in 5 or 10 years getting drunk in the same bar. So that kind of happened. Then I went to work, got invited to commemorate somebody's 30th year work anniversary at the company I was working at the time. And this was it was a company treated us well. And the CEO of this company comes in and gives them a plaque and a watch. And I remember thinking, I don't want that plaque and I don't want that watch. Like, I don't want to be here in 30 years. And then the final thing that happened, I went home that night and there was a commercial on TV to sign up for the U.S. Navy. And my respects to everybody in the armed services, but if you start shooting at me, I'll start running away as fast as physically possible. So I didn't want to sign up. But there's one scene where it's nighttime and there's waves crashing up on this beach. And out of this darkness, a dinghy comes out and, these 6 Navy SEALs jump out with guns and the stars there, right? If they were to write a book about your life, would anybody want to read it? And I remember sitting there in my condo by myself in Cleveland, Ohio, and thinking, no, if I continue on this path I'm on right now, I wouldn't want to read my own book. And that's kind of what led me to quit my job, start traveling the world and becoming an entrepreneur. And that was about 20 years ago now. And since then, I've started multiple online education companies, even brick and mortar education companies. But I did that once and not doing that again because it's just so much easier to do things online these days. And I've sold 4 and built 22 profitable companies. Let's not talk about the 40 or so that failed. 1 out of 3 is not too bad. So
yeah, that's not. You're doing pretty good for yourself, I think. Important to note because all of us, everybody listening wants to hear, like, it's not going to happen perfectly the first time. Everything's not going to be a success story, but those we can't even call them fails. Those are lessons that help you have really successful companies.
So I define failure as not getting back up, not as having fallen. Right? So those were just businesses where I fell over and didn't work. I moved on to the next one, but I did get back up and try again. And just to put things in perspective for everybody here, it took me 7 years to get to 7 figures with my first 7 figures. This most recent one took 7 months, but I've been doing this for 20 years. So I just was able to crunch down everything that we did before in 7 years into 7 months, but I couldn't have shortcutted the whole process. If you're just starting up today, you're probably not going to hit 7 figures in 7 months unless you get really, really lucky.
When I first started listening to Justin and Tara, who started this show on their original version, which is 8 Minute Millionaire, I totally believed, put it out there very publicly, like, I'm going to make $1 million in this first year. And it's such a great ambition to have. It's great vision to have and put out there. And it took 3, so I did okay. But it's you have to have understanding that there's a skill set that needs to be learned. There's so many shifts that have to happen, lots of lessons that happen along the way. So with that being said, tell me a little bit about what you're doing now in terms of productized education and break down what that means for our listeners.
Absolutely. So where I'm at right now, I still own 3 companies, but I either CEOs, I'm on the board of those. So some of the companies range from about 50 to 120 employees, right? So I don't actually have to run much of the day-to-day operations in them. The one that I'm primarily involved with my wife. So my wife has been my business partner in numerous companies. People always ask, do you recommend that? I'm like, absolutely not. But I've been doing it for 20 years, so we don't really know any other way to do it. So productized education, this is kind of what we're focused on right now. And we have two levels. At first off, I do executive coaching for people with online education companies that are between the 500,000 to 2.5 million, and I help them scale to figures. So that's kind of one side. But the side that's probably most interesting to your audience is the side where we help people take their knowledge, usually people with 10, 20, 30 years of experience, and if they're so inclined, start an online business in the education space. And I'm not saying a coaching business, because I like distinguishing there's coaching businesses, and they're plenty. I have a lot of friends who help people start launch coaching businesses. I'm not poo-poo, but like this is a slightly different model. It's still trade time for money. Teach something. You can charge a lot of time. You can charge $1,000 for that hour, but it's still generally time for money. A productized education business is where you essentially build a school on, and that's what we've known how to do. I've had about 150 teachers working for me at any given time. It's kind of building a whole business around what we believe strongly in productized education, especially in today's world where like AI's out there and YouTube, essentially knowledge is commoditized. Like teaching somebody how to add 1 + 1 is equal to 2. That's where value is lost. And a lot of people think that means education or teaching is going to die. And no, because they're ignoring a huge part of what education and teaching is. Teaching is not just transfer of knowledge, right? It's not, you can't give, I have a 5-year-old son. You can't give my 5-year-old son, here's a book, learn it. There's a lot more to it than that. Even if he's 5, he doesn't know how to read. Assuming he knew how to read, he'd still not be able to absorb all that information. I believe that there's 3 parts to education, to learning. And that is knowledge is one of them, commoditized, so don't charge for that. But then there's connection and accountability. Those are the 2 things that if you want to launch an online education business that you really should be focusing on. Connection is the connection you get with the person that's teaching you, right? And this can be on multiple different levels. Not only is it easier for you to the information by somebody you resonate with, you'll also remember it. The example I'll use is if you grew up with your mom was cooking something. You probably remember that recipe to this day because you sat there and there's this emotional connection you had to your teacher, which was your mom this time. Pancakes, a cake, certain dish that you've made as childhood. Flip it over to somebody who gives you a cookbook and says, learn how to do this. You're probably able to make the dish at the time as you read. 2 weeks later, you have no idea how you make that dish, right? You'd have no memory of it because there was no connection to the information coming into you. So that's the first part. Accountability is the second part. Kirsten, you know this well. Like you said, 3 years to get to 7 figures. It wasn't 30 seconds to get to 7 figures. It wasn't. Consistency is key to success. And most of us, if we're like human beings, the best way we can be consistent is hold ourselves accountable or be held accountable by somebody else. Holding ourselves accountable is ideal, but let's be honest. We're human beings. We're like, I don't really want to go to the gym at 5:30 this morning. I'm kind of tired. I didn't sleep well last night. But if you have a personal trainer waiting for you at the gym, I'm not going to say 100%, but you're probably going to go because there's a human being holding you accountable. And Apple won't do that. Like if your cell phone says go to your gym at 5:30 in the morning, and the smartest app in the world on that thing, you're still probably not going to go to the gym if you don't feel like. So those are the 2 components. That's what we teach in productized education, is how to build a business around those, not around the idea of just kind of giving, selling knowledge. Because I think that if that's your business model, you're going to be out of business in a year or 2, because that's not really what people pay for anymore. Knowledge is out there. Go to ChatGPT, go to OpenAI. They'll give you all the knowledge you need.
Yeah. Well, and I have both. I have courses and I have coaching that I do because I'm always constantly building one thing and then have this that's kind of optimized and systematized in terms of having it one to many. But I even was talking to somebody yesterday who was wanting to hire me. Didn't even go into the conversation like ready to pitch. Like we were just like networking, connecting. And by the end, she's like, how do I work with you? And she asked this, she's like, can I just be real? Like, why would I want to hire you when I could use AI? And I was like, it was such a funny question. It didn't throw me at all because I was like, that's such a weird thing to compare, but also I understand where people are coming from. They think this holds all of the answers. And I said, well, you need context. Like you need somebody who's going to tell you when the content is good or bad. ChatGPT is going to tell you what you want to hear and it'll analyze to an extent, but like, how are you going to know you have the context for the content it gave you? And it's also, I mean, I don't know about anybody listening. And if you have ever done this, like you put in there and you ask for some content ideas and it will give you like, look at the camera intently and say this. And I'm like, that is not something that I want to learn from an AI. It means well. So I'm coaching her on content creation and marketing and understanding how to do some attraction marketing online. And like, there's no way the AI can do that. Now I will plug her in, right? To give her captions and help her maximize the effort she's putting in. But I think right there just proves what you said. Like, it's not capable, nor will it ever be, of replacing certain value that
Exactly.
only people and connection can provide.
Don't get me wrong. I'm a computer engineer. I'm not anti-AI. I use AI all the time. Like, trust me,
Yeah.
if you read my emails pre-AI, like the spelling mistakes and grammar and like some of the things that are repeating sentences, they're awful. I pass everything through. I'm not against it, but it is a tool. The
Yeah.
thing is, people think AI is going to replace humans, at least in the education space. And that's where I'm totally against. Even you said you have courses. That's great. That needs to be part of a productized education business, because there's certain things where it's even better for some people to learn by a pre-made digital course, because you can learn at your own pace. Some people call them self-paced courses. The problem where
Mm-hmm.
like a straight course, in my opinion, just falls short but in and of itself, by itself. It's just the course, but there's nothing else. So like a productized
Mm-hmm.
education business does have courses, but there's usually either a community or a group coaching or something tied to that to hold you accountable and to build the connection
Yeah.
with past just, here's a video on YouTube, which is, essentially self-directed. You can go to Udemy, self-directed courses for $7. Most topics, and they'll get you 80% of whatever you need. You want to learn Facebook ads, pay $10. It'll vaguely show you around Facebook ads, right? You're not going to reach
Mm-hmm.
the full level of success, probably. And you know how those fully digital courses usually have a completion rate of about 20 to 30%. And I think that statistic is optimistic, because people say completion rate 20, 30%. That doesn't mean success rate. That just means people who
Right.
physically watch the whole. Out of that,
Mm-hmm.
there are no statistics that at least I can find which show how many of those people actually execute and do and change their lives by the result of watch the whole thing. Probably a much smaller percent, as opposed to
Yeah.
Kirsten talking. Let's just your executive clients, the ones you work personally. If you ask how many people actually have success doing that, 90% probably, because they have human connection with you. You hold them accountable. You say in 2 weeks, I'm going to. It's pretty embarrassing to get on a call with you in 2 weeks, and they're paying money,
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't done. And then suddenly, oh my goodness, they might be cramming like I did in college right before the test, like 3 hours before the call with you, all the work they were supposed to have gotten done over the 2 weeks, but they do it. And that's the
Yeah.
difference. And sure, it costs a little bit more, but the results are just so much better that I think there's no comparison between the two. A $10 course that you
Mm.
don't do is worthless, as opposed to a $2,000 course where you have the accountability and the connection, and it actually generates results, which monetarily gives you money back, or you lose, or whatever it is that the course you're doing. That is exactly product as education at its core. After that, we teach scale,
Mm-hmm.
hiring others, how to manage the teachers and for code people you have on board. That's part of it. That's after you get this first piece in place.
Yeah. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about even the initial steps? Like, because, and I'm of the very firm belief that, and I love that you said this in the beginning, people who have 20 to 30 years of experience doing that thing. I think we saw this surge of people who just loved the concept of selling an online education piece or
Mm-hmm.
selling a tool or whatever. And they almost struggled to market it because they didn't really create it as a solution. They didn't really put the right context into it. It was just like, cool. And then we had this like really dark side of using AI where it's like, I'll go write this program. It told me how to create a course on Pinterest. I just like regurgitated what the AI told me, and now I'm an expert and I have a course. So like, tell me what the approach needs to be and how you coach or recommend people to take the actual lived experience and turn that into a system or a leverage point that isn't just information.
Great question. So, productized education, go to our website and you can actually find a graphic of this, right? Basically, you can see it's like 3 circles with like arrows going around, and it's a cycle that kind of goes out. 3
Mm-hmm.
components. There's the teaching component, the student component, what we call the process. Teaching component, iteration number 1 is generally when you, being whoever it is, the person who's creating the business, because you're the one with the knowledge, you're the teacher. First, you move to the right, your first students. And then once you have first students, you have to process and optimize it, which makes you take it. Allows you to get a few more students, but eventually you fill up, which means you have first teacher, which means you need more students, better processes, and then the cycle just kind of keeps on going round and round and round. So from there, you can get how we generally start working with people who are building it up. You are the first teacher. The challenge there is you're the teacher because you have the knowledge, but you may or may not know how to teach. And I'll speak from personal experience. I mentioned that I partner with my wife on a lot of businesses. She's actually a trained teacher. I was not when I started all of this. Arguably, I'm not now after 20 years, but I'm slightly better than I was before. There are methodologies to actually transfer information from one person to another. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Curriculum design is a thing, and there's actual better ways of passing information. My way before tended to be the shotgun method. It's like, here it is, have fun, right? Like, and you
Mm-hmm.
can put it together in some kind of thing that made sense. That's generally what people who are experts do. And the reason is you forgot what it was like to be a beginner. There are certain things that, Kirsten, you and I could probably talk about, like marketing things and stuff like that, use terminology like, what's your CPC and your CPL? Oh, that's it. Oh, that wouldn't make much sense if the TAM's too small. Like, but if to us, that's no big deal. But we talk to somebody on the
Mm-hmm.
street about that. No, are you speaking English? What is it you're
Yeah.
talking about? And we forget it because we've been doing it for so long. That's what
Yeah.
curriculum design and building an actual program, why it's so important in step number one. And the reason we say
Mm-hmm.
start with one person, you're the ones teaching, you're the students, and you build the process. Because for the first few iterations, you want to be the one, you're an expert. You can hire somebody else to opt it because you don't know what works and what doesn't. So our first
Mm-hmm.
round around the productized education circle is you, students, bring the process. Sounds tedious.
Mm-hmm.
Like our program, for example, is over a year because most people we work with have full-time jobs. So it's not like I'm quitting at 40 hours a week, right? So this is something you can do slow
Yeah.
time. But it's all about iteration. So kind of stay on the level one and kind of loop around a few times until you get it down. Level two is when you start hiring. Okay, now it works. Now I can teach somebody else to teach what I'm teaching. I can have enough processes that work here. There's still other things you have to do because once you have staff, you need all this other process. You need to start building management processes around it. But I can bring one person in to start taking over these students. Or
Yeah.
I need to bring another person in. And that's kind of the way our high level, that's how our system works. And then there are different kind of, it breaks down into subsystems within that. But that's kind of how you do it. It's essentially, if you just took away from this interview, you could probably successfully create your business. One of the things that working with somebody like you or working with somebody like me, the difference is we just speed things up, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we probably made all those mistakes you've made before and kind of help you avoid it. I also realized not everybody can afford it. I couldn't afford something like that when I started. My first job, I had 2000, when we started to launch our first business, I had $2,000 in the bank account for the business and to live.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have paid somebody to teach. I had to go and do it
Yeah.
myself. And one
Yep.
thing I believe in, this is what I do, like, I have a YouTube channel, all the rest. I give it all away for free. You can figure it out yourself. My biggest company right now is a college prep company, and we've grown 300% the last 2 years. We're on track for 200% this year. We should hit 8 figures by next year. It's 24 months old, 36 months, I guess, old. What is our model? We give everything away for free. Every little thing. You can watch our stuff for free. You can actually child through high school and apply to college, everything we have on our site. Most parents are busy and working professionals, and they don't have time to watch hundreds of hours of videos and learn the intricacies of college application and financial aid and all of that kind of stuff. Makes more sense to them if they can pay an expert to walk them and their child through the entire process. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
where I believe, and that's the accountability and the connection side of things. And that's what I believe. Like, if you want to build a sustainable long-term education business, that's what you sell. Give everything away for free. Nothing's a secret anymore. No, I'll even go against like Gary Vaynerchuk, like, the whole give him away 80%, charge him for 20%. No, give him away 100%. Charge him for connection and
Yeah.
accountability. That's it.
Mm. And it simplifies creation so much too, right? Like I think sometimes this holds you back from being like, well, what do I give for free? And what do I give, what do I gatekeep? What do I hold back and put behind a paywall? And I think that can overcomplicate the process entirely in and of itself. Even after having learned things, gone through programs, and like then wanting to teach that to other people, like just trying to break down like what am I allowed to talk about? What am I not allowed to talk about? It doesn't really serve anything or anyone. And I think we all know, like those who pay attention, those who invest, like it's kind of changing the problem from just access to information to access to like implementation. So I love that. And I think your model is brilliant. It feels so much more responsible than what most people in this industry will say, which is just like, put all your information in a course and never touch it again. And you don't even have to nurture people. You don't have to help anyone. It's just like, there it is. You're done. Go live on the beach and have just this beautiful lifestyle. And I think that hearing you talk about even the method you use to scale, where it's like, yes, you're going to be driving the bus for a minute. You're going to bring in students. You're going to take them along the path. And then don't just put the information out there, give them a new guide, like create new support for those people and scale that way. Like, and I guess this really goes back to like your whole fundamental mission with your company and your message is this is about creating like online schools. And that really aligns with us too. Like that's essentially what we're doing with Millionaire University. We're giving everything away for free. And I love when I first brought you on, I was like, I know it's ambitious to think on a podcast you can learn everything you need to. I don't know. I think it actually might not be too ambitious because we've had every expert you can imagine, and they're giving the nitty-gritty. They're talking numbers, they're giving strategy. If we were trying to hold that back and gatekeep because they have a course to sell at the end, it doesn't help anyone. If anything, it's like, I'll pay you to have access to actually get this thing done 100%. So, yeah, I love that. It's a very cool, responsible, like very obvious approach to education. And I love that we've shifted into that and that you're advocating for more support, not less.
It's absolutely age of AI. I think all of us are getting, I mean, it's cool. I have my Studio Ghibli photos going on. Depending on when somebody's listening to this, it'll be more relevant. Like right now, that's a thing, right? Going all
Mhm.
over social media, right? I love it. Touching on my 5-year-old son again. Like I would never send my son. If I went to a school and they're like, all our teachers are, I would turn around and go and look for another school
Mhm.
because that is not where I'm going to send my son because that's not the real world. Does he need to learn how to use AI? Is he going to have digital material and courses? Absolutely. You should definitely learn how to, but it's a more holistic approach to online education. And just even from a business competitivity point of view, um, unless you are a VC backed company, hundreds of millions of dollars, you're not going to compete with it. Like, because there are people throwing $100 million at that problem and they're trying to
Mhm.
sell 100, 8 billion people to buy it for 1 penny at a time. Like, are you going to charge less than a penny? Like, there's no way you can do it. But what
Mhm.
will realistically never replace unless, somebody's scamming you. Just say somebody created an ad that looks perfect on a Zoom call. Like you don't even know it's the only way that you would even build an artificial connection with them is if somebody lied to you and said that was a real person. If
Mhm.
you knew that person was AI, even if they look absolutely real, wouldn't build a connection to them.
Yeah.
Because that's just the computer. Maybe
Mhm.
in a few generations there will be real connections, but I don't think that's anything we're going to worry about in our lifetimes or maybe even our kids' lifetime because that's not going to be a huge issue. So double down on that. Like anything, the
Mhm.
world it started with social media. Now with it's so much easier not to be connected to people these days. But I think people want that more. People want to be held
Mhm.
accountable more, want to have more connection to people. So give people what they
Yeah.
want for their own good. Like this is not we're not trying to
Mhm.
cram this down people's throats because you don't. This is going to make you a happier person, a healthier person. It's going to make you learn faster. It's going to hopefully help you reach whatever dreams that you have better. And if we can build a
Yeah.
business around that, it's good for us. It's good for our family. It's good for the world.
Mm. I love that. Okay, so we've touched a little bit on that capacity to scale because you're continuing to bring that connection piece even after you've moved yourself up into a different level within the
Mhm.
education component of things. Tell me, continuing on, what that looks like as you move into scale. And I love that we're just doing this mindset shift around, like, it's not just course creation, right? This is online education amplified with that personal touch. And I think that those pivots have been necessary. Like I said, people just threw out a course and that's that. And people, we want higher completion rates, not just for our own testimonials and reviews, but because we genuinely want to help people have those results, have that impact. And so, what else do you recommend as we're building this out that kind of makes what you guys do a little more unique than what the masses have been taught for the last 10 or 15 years?
So one of the other things that makes this model work, so I'll kind of use the example of what happened in the Industrial Revolution, again, going back to the revolution we're having right now. People say, for example, that the industrial horse and buggy, right? Industrial Revolution just
Mhm.
killed horse and buggy. It's not exactly true. The Industrial Revolution killed mediocre and below horse and buggies. If you ever go to, if anybody's been to Italy or, Mexico or all these tourist sites, there are still very fancy horse and buggies that are somebody's building those and probably selling them for a lot of money. So what the Industrial
Mhm.
Revolution did was it kind of killed the mediocre, but the really good people still stayed out. When Ford made cars public for everybody, it didn't kill the car industry. They're still Ferraris. They're still that high end. So what you want to do if you're building this online education business, a productized education business, is you do want to charge a premium for it. So you don't go into this, and this is kind of also different from the courses, but an expensive course might be a few $100s. As I said, in Udemy, you can get a $7 course, or there's always 70% off on those sites, but you can get a $7 course. There is a commoditized, it's a race to the bottom. With productized education, charge what you're worth. Because especially if what you're teaching gives
Mm.
value. This is not my thing, but what are the three things that people for it's richer, increasing social status and health? Like those are generally the three things that. So
Yeah.
you help somebody get healthier. Is that worth $1,000? Is that worth $2,000? So I actually have a wisdom to wealth formula that we use. But I'm happy to share the whole giveaway thing. Basically,
Yeah.
exercise is what I call the 21-year-old self exercise. So you look at yourself, let's just say for easy math, you're 41 years old. You make $100,000. And when you were 21, you made $50,000. So the whole exercise is if I went back in time to my 21-year-old self and taught them everything I know, how much is that worth? And it's pretty easy, right? 20 years, $50,000, right? So if I taught go to a 21-year-old person, that knowledge is worth $1 million. So when people ask how much should I charge for my course, charge them 1% of that. 1% of all whatever it is you're selling. So $10,000. Now, there's a lot that's overly simplistic, but if somebody came to you and said, give me $10,000 and I'll make you $1 million. And you believed them because it was honest, right? They had the testimonials. They had all these people saying it works. They had all that kind of stuff. I think most people would be like, yeah, take my money, $10,000. And nobody would say, wow, you ripped me off. $10,000. And absolutely. Same thing with in the health space, right? If you cure health problems have been chronic for 20 years and somebody's been, you save them for the rest of their life, you can charge a good amount of money. You shouldn't feel guilty doing it. So you were talking about how to scale. That's the way to scale. Do not, 1,000 true fans getting 1,000 people to pay you a few $1,000s versus trying to get 1 million people to pay you $1. That's the way you want to be going with a productized education business. It also allows you to hire great teachers and grow your business in that way instead of minimum wage and try to 20% margin off the top and find ways to cut corners because you're just trying to pay bills. Like, you'll give a better service to your people. You'll be able to treat your team better. And I think.
Yeah, fully. Okay. I love that. You also, in that, or earlier in the conversation, you kind of touched on this whole like ecosystem that you're creating. You're teaching, you're bringing in those people. Eventually you're adding in other people. Let's talk about like cost, because you mentioned too, like you're great at bootstrapping. There's been this big promise of like, oh, there's no overhead, like it's not brick and mortar. So there's very low expense with creating an online business. And then you get into it and you're like, oh my gosh, it's this and that. And there's more softwares, there's more this. Like, I don't think that really anyone needs a venture capitalist or any venture capital to build an education business, but even just simple bootstrapping, what do you recommend for people to just bring in cash flow revenue so that they can then move into that more like one-to-many model?
So mentioned from another thing, the different cycles as you grow out from the 3 core that I was talking about.
Yeah.
The first one, software costs are almost zero, almost. It's pretty close to it. You need a website. You can go on some of these kind of cheaper hosting sites and for like $60 to $100 per year, your domain, your email, and your website. There's that cost. You throw up the website in WordPress. If you have a little extra budget, you go on a site, upwork.com, and you get somebody to build it for you and it looks professional enough. Good to go. Stage one is good enough. For the actual delivery of the material, use Zoom and use Google Drive. That's it. Zero costs on that. So Gmail, Google Drive, all the rest of it, you can link it back into your domain so it even looks professional. So it doesn't come from a Gmail address, it comes from Kirsten@domain.com. Pretty easy to set you up, watch a YouTube video, get this stuff set up right away. That'll take you to multiple 6 figures, or at least 1 6 figure. You do not need anything more than that to get people there. How do you give classes? Zoom. Pay for Zoom, because otherwise you have a 30-minute limit on there. But Google, you can use that. I'm not a huge fan.
Google Meet.
Yeah, do that for free. If people are saying, I don't want to do this because it costs money, that's really not it. Is it 100% free? No. But I'm talking like $50 to $100 a month. Max $100 is like top end a month. The thing is, since you're selling your knowledge, you can start doing this right away. Like, in our program, you should make your money back within 90 days. Because if you can just bring 1 or 2 people on at a good price, remember we're telling you should be charging a few $1,000s, just pay for 5 years. Do this yourself. You just pay for a few years of Google Drive, Google Suite, which is like $5 a month. Just pay for like a decade's worth off your first class. Like those costs should go away within 30 days. So your bottom side risk is very low. Your top side benefit is. So one framework I like to think about for a lot of people who kind of have this objection, I call it the worst case scenario framework, is most people are very scared to take the first step, right? I have a stable job, quote unquote, stable job. This income, I don't want to lose it. And at least the people that I work with, which, 10, 20, 30 years of experience, I start walking through it. Look, what would happen? Let's just say, asking you to quit your job. It's a side. You can do this on the side, but let's just say you quit your job today and you went all in on this for a year and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
What would probably happen? You're a working professional. Could you realistically get the same job you have today or a similar job? Just keep in mind, you're not sitting on the beach for the year, so you don't have this big gap in your resume. You're teaching what you do anyway, probably, because that's the easiest thing for you to teach. So, been doing it for this whole year. You could probably get the same job yet. And most people say, yeah, I probably could. And as long as, like the world doesn't blow up in that time, like, yes, I could go and get a job. So the next question for them is so what really is the worst case scenario if you try to do this? I would get the same job I have today.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the framework. You're living your worst case scenario right now. The only possibility is a year from now, your life can be better or your life will be the same. And that's even not even, because if you try to launch your own business for a year, your skill set is not the same 12 months down the road as it is today. Anyway. You probably get even a better job than you had today. But let's just say worst case scenario, you can have exactly the same job you have today. So your worst case scenario is you're living it right now. You're living your worst case.
I love that. That's pretty impactful when you really think about that. Like, worst thing that could happen, I'd be where I am. What does that tell you right now about where you are?
Exactly. When people think of it that way, I always see like a light bulb go up. It's like, ooh, kind of, or a little, it's either the light bulb or it feels like somebody just stabbed them, right? They kind of had that look.
The gut punch.
The gut punch. Yeah. Like, yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about marketing too when it comes to these productized businesses. So what strategy do you recommend, or like tips or advice you have for helping education entrepreneurs stand out in like very increasingly crowded niches? Like, more people are doing this. There's a lot of educators out there. How do we stand out aside from having those support? People buy for different reasons. So what are your recommendations?
So again, different rings on this thing. At different stages, I recommend different things, of course.
Yeah.
Before you launch, what I actually do recommend is to see if you can scale this business with any kind of paid ads. Like, check that before you even launch the business, because in the long term, that's probably the way that you're going to scale it. Yeah, you might get lucky and go viral on social media and all the rest of it. But like me as an engineer with my engineering background, like I don't want to plan on that. That happens. It's a bonus on top of all the rest of the plans. So you can look on YouTube. I actually have some videos on it as well on YouTube. There are ways to figure out how much you would have to pay for a click on Google, on Facebook, kind of estimations. $10 per click. Assuming you can convert 1% of them, I'm going to charge this much. Can this be profitable if it works out, if I run paid ads? The answer is yes. You do the next step. The first step, though, is most of us, if you don't have the money, as we talked about, let's assume you only have $50 to $100 a month. That's not a way. Step one is what I call the 101 outreach, which is you reach out to 101 people in your network, but you don't reach out with just a bulk email, put them in the BCC field and send an email. You make a personalized Loom video for every single one of them, and you follow a simple format. First format is, hey, Kirsten, how are you doing? We haven't chatted in a while. If you haven't talked, just makes you talk a little bit about personal. Second thing is you actually just talk about the idea that you're having. Don't sell. This is not a sales email. Like, I'm trying to do this, and you're somebody I respect, and I'd love your feedback. Reach out to somebody you really do respect and want feedback from, because otherwise this doesn't make any sense. And also, do you know anybody interested in this program? I'd really love an introduction. Now, two things will possibly happen out of it. Well, three possible things. One, you probably reconnect with friends, and you always add a link at the bottom, say, I'd love to catch up. We haven't talked in a while. Here's my calendar link. Let's jump on a call. Catching up with old friends, but more than likely, they know somebody who might be interested in this program, or they themselves might be interested in this program, and you get your first clients out. If you reach out to 101 people, I guarantee you a few clients out. And that's going to test it. That's going to get your first beta of the program. If you do 101 outreach, which only has happened once in our entire program, and nobody wants it, means you're just way off track with what you're offering. Like, if you can't sell this to 101 of your closest friends, like, this is probably not a product that has any appeal to build a business on. You get those people in there, you give them a early bird's price. Don't do it for free. A lot of people fall into that trap, but they're my friends. I'm going to do it for free. But no, but then they're not going to complete the course, and you're not going to get everything. Have them do it. You can give them a much lower price, and ask at the end of it, if they have the results, can I get testimonials? Can I get video testimonials out of this? Not written testimonials, because, I can go on ChatGPT and create 500 written testimonials in 30 seconds. Nobody believes that. But a video, until that's good enough to fit. People do believe. One of my jokes is one of my most effective testimonials. This one guy, he's very awkward on camera. and it's grainy and he's sitting on his couch and he has this really kind of weird photo in the back. And people love it because they're like, there's no way that's fake. Like, there's not an actor, right? Like, he just, he's just so awkward on camera. Like, this is not it. You can tell he's kind of looking at the questions I'm asking him to answer on like, his eyes is looking off the left. Those are the best kind of testimonials. I have one or two that like some and all the rest. They don't do quite as well. That is step number one in launching your business. That will get you up, to the first dozen clients. And if you try a few thousand, we're talking like 20 to 50 to $100,000 of income you can get with that. Then you start running the ads, and now everybody believes you. And then there are different models for paid ads, webinars, direct to sales calls. That's more of a testing thing, upsells and all of that. But so the way online education businesses work, you can tell I love this, so I talk a lot about it, is at the beginning, they're all similar, but the kind of bigger your business gets, they become more and more specific. So like there's general advice I'm comfortable giving to people starting off. But once you get to step 2, there's 3 paths. Once you get to step 3, there's possibly 20 things you can, because it depends on your industry and your business and the direction your business is going. So it's not one path for everybody to take to the end.
Yeah. Yep. And it probably also depends a little bit on industry, where your people are, the best way that you're going to connect with them. You may never have to do a whole lot of like attraction marketing, content marketing at all, because it could be so niche, or it could be so like you're kind of the only one in that little space and you're the obvious next thing. So yeah, I love that. We know in marketing, there's not just one generic path, but I think that's good to keep in mind just what you typically do. And just keeping in mind, there's multiple ways to the finish line. There's multiple ways to scale a product business like this. And I just want to speak to the obvious too, in a world where there are so many different businesses you can try. Like what do you love the most about being able to productize education? Like, what do you think is the win? Like, everybody should be doing this because.
Everybody should be doing this because it allows you to have impact on both your own life and somebody else's life in the long term. So some of these other ones are cash grabs. Some of them are harder to scale. Some of the cash grabs, in my opinion, is impact on your own life. Great. You're sitting on a yacht somewhere, but like really get results for the people. And at least that's not the way I want to live my life. I want to be, I don't really want to, assuming I did, I'd like to be able to do that. And, but also sit there with all the students that kind of went on there with me, because I see their success and we're all celebrating together. And that, I think, is what productized education allows. It allows you to scale it without sacrificing your life. So I actually just put up a post earlier this morning about, there are all these gurus online that are talking about work at 150% for the next 5 years. Go to bed at 2 a.m. and wake up at 3 a.m. every single day and work 7 days a week. And that's how you're going to reach success. And I'm like, my post this morning was actually, I just posted before this call. It's called How to Achieve Plus in Life by Being a B- Student. Just got to be consistent B- over 20 years, and you'll probably be doing it, because most people won't bother doing stuff for more than a week. So you do it for 2, you'll be a B- student for 3 weeks, and you're probably crap. So, but most of us are not those people who want to build $billion businesses, and that's all there is to life. We have relationships, family, we have our health, we have hobbies, we have things we want to do, we want to travel. Be B- like 4 or 5 things, and you'll probably be very, very successful.
Yeah. When you work with people and they're really shifting from like, I have all this information and knowledge within me and I want to make this impact, do you feel like there's a specific framework or formula for extracting that? And like, I think I kind of asked something like this before, where instead of just information, obviously we want to give processes, we want to give tools that are going to help them to do the thing that we do. But even how do we amplify that from just the things that we know and really break this down to somebody who is in the beginning stages, so that there's a formula for achieving the same results that we have?
Absolutely. So high level formula is, we picture your ideal student. Where are they now? Where do you want to get them there? And so what's the one thing you can teach them, what we call the keystone material, that would get them closest to that goal? Not all the way, because usually it's multiple steps to get them. But what is the first thing you can teach them that'll, let's say, here's it. For those of you watching, I'm going to put it closer on the screen. 2 things are farther away. One will get them 20% of the way, 30%, 40% of the way. The first thing that you can teach them. And that is the thing we focus on in the beginning. This is the keystone. Then we can start adding more stuff on top of it. And that's, you can build the whole course. But a lot of people get intimidated because they go in there and say, I need to have all of it. Like, no, you don't. You need step 1. So kind of as a side note, I also teach Japanese sword fighting. Like, so it's kind of a side hobby. And one of the things that we teach, why not? I'm like, I've been doing that for 20 years. And the thing is, people always say, so the way that it works in class is If you've been there 2 days and somebody who just shows up today, they're senior. So the way you sit is like sit on their right, wherever they are, and senpai is what they call it. And I always get from these the students who've only been with us a few months, is like, can I give them advice? I'm like, absolutely, you can give them advice, because you only have to be one step ahead in the path to be able to teach the person behind you. The problem is, in fact, it's harder for somebody who's already at the end of the path to teach the person in the beginning. So that's what we encourage people when they're doing, like, teach them step 1 or 2. Like, that's what we need to focus on. Don't worry about teaching them everything on the first day. They won't succeed if you do that. That's just like overload. They get so overwhelmed, they don't do it. Keystone material, teach the first step. Show them that they can succeed, because there's a mindset component to all of this. Like anything you learn, there's a mindset. And unless you are a mindset coach, which is a totally different, I don't teach mindset, but I do. And the way I do it is you can succeed in the first month with something small, right? A small success. And then on your second success in the second month, another success in the third. Oh, a year down the road, your mindset's different. It didn't teach you mindset. It showed you could succeed bit by bit by bit. And then you kind of made your way along.
I love it. And that brings up an important point too, where if you're just putting like the keystone thing in that program, I know we've talked about scaling with bringing more people in to support students, but let's talk about like introducing more products. Like how many is too many, and when do you know that it's time to add that next thing? And are we very much just read the room? What are your recommendations on that?
Absolutely. So since you already have the knowledge, and we'd already talked about it, like the first step is where you're trying to get them. So you just keep adding material to get them there. This should not be an infinite journey, because another thing that we talk about in productized education is the 3 different ways of educational products, but I'll kind of jump ahead to the best. What we think is sell results, don't sell the process. One of the biggest companies, we built one of the largest online language schools in the world. Like that was one of our businesses. And one of the jokes that we had in there is like, nobody wants to learn Spanish. Everybody wants to speak Spanish. Like that's all people care about. And you need to build your course around that model. And so it means if you can teach them everything you know how to know, and you know how to teach in 3 months, you're fine. Don't try to keep on adding another 9 months of material onto the end of it by artificially blowing it up. You've taught them, you're done. Charge them a premium, get people there, get results, and just get people, get them through the program as quickly as possible so you can get more testimonials. They recommend their friends and they kind of go through it. If your program takes a year, because a lot of things do take more time, like, what they're talking about building a business, probably not 3 months. Like that is a much longer term problem. But it's not in our benefit. Like we are in the business of getting you results. Yeah. If you are like a hard worker, you quit your job and you do everything we teach you in our program in 6 months, that's success to me. I'm not going to create new material on top. What I do, if you really want continuing resources after that, and this is what we teach, you build a community. Because once people get to that like top 20% of businesses, that's really what they're looking for, because it's no longer tactical, it's more strategic. And a lot of this, because nobody's going to know your business as well as you do. One of my clients works in the construction safety. Probably one of the leaders there. Why does he pay me for community and coaching? Like I will not teach him anything about construction and safety, other than knowing how to put on a hard hat. I know nothing about that. It's because he's looking for somebody to talk about who has other business ideas and stuff. So that's what the community aspect goes in. You can do that. It's usually the reoccurring money, a few $100s a month, a few $1,000s a month, what it is. And you can have this kind of community where people can exchange ideas, maybe run masterminds, where it's not, you're no longer the expert. You're just a facilitator at that point. You're bringing together your own students who are now experts like you, and they're all bouncing ideas off each other to grow the business.
Well, and you mentioned having like one of the largest language programs ever. And so when in that business model too, is it kind of the same thing? Like there's a cap on this, or is it, if people are thinking like even bigger or a totally different model, and maybe you don't facilitate this as much, but really building that online school, like where you have multiple different programs, you're solving different problems. If Millionaire University were to become that online digital school we want to be eventually, like there's so much room there to just bring in other teachers, scale in a different way, and you have like the overall campus community, right?
And I mean, that we absolutely did that online language school because we taught multiple languages. So we started with Spanish, then we went English and Japanese, Chinese, and all the rest. So if you want to look at it there, essentially what you're doing, using the school analogy, the college, you are building a university and they have colleges within, and that you can absolutely do it. So there's College of Medicine, there's College of Engineering, there's college, you absolutely can do that. There are some challenges when you build something like that. And we do this at Eagle Lock, which is the college prep company that I run. We have the financial aid division, and then we have the one that's college admissions, then we have the AP tutoring, all of those. And they're entirely different products, even though they serve the same community. With Millionaire University, you want to be doing something similar. You're not going to be saying, we teach painting over here and we teach marketing for on Facebook over here. Like that's just way off base and it's like all over the place, right? Know your audience, build the products around those, and you absolutely can build multiple products. But keep in mind, you're not really deviating from the model. Your students here, you're trying to get them over here just because the complexity of what you're teaching, there are actually multiple add-on products. But you're not trying to get them anywhere different. It's not like they're all trying to go to a different place. They're trying to get somewhere here. But it's such a complex thing. I need marketing. I need to know human resources and hiring and management and systems and how to put up in a ClickUp or whatever project, like all these different things that you can do. The way that I would expand it and what way we recommend, you bring in experts in that, right? Because then that's a productized education business once again, because it's not a coaching business. Coaching business is usually, Kirsten, you're the face, you're the expert, and you're teaching only what you know. In a productized education business, you're not doing that anymore. You are no longer, you might be the first face, but you're never, the goal of the business is not to build it around a personal brand per se. It's to build it around multiple things. So bring in 4 or 5 other teachers who are experts and then have them teach. And that's totally legit because it's a path. Your guides on the path. You are not this one all-knowing person at the top who knows everything about everything on the step. I don't know. But talked to my CFO the other day and I'm like, I have no idea what half those numbers on that page you're showing with me. Like, I don't know what that is. Did we spend more money than we made? Did we make more money than we spent? He's like, yes. I'm like, good. I'm good. The rest of the stuff, like, I don't need to know the rest of it, right? Hire people who are good at those things.
Yeah. What would you recommend if somebody maybe loves this whole idea and this concept of building an education empire, but they don't necessarily want to be the teacher? Like, do you feel like there's an opportunity there to just partner with experts, do the business side? I'm seeing this happen more and more. I think in the school community, they were recommending like partner with the front person who has the audience, has the connection, and you bring some of this. Like, do you see that being a successful approach if you just want to run kind of the back end?
Right. That's actually my partners and all. I am the person who knows how to build the business. I am usually not the expert in what we teach. So let's mention my partner, Tony, over at Eagle Eye. I'm not the college admissions expert. He's the one who was the college admissions expert at Berkeley and UCLA and all the rest. I build a business around it. In the language school, I'm a language teacher. My wife was. And she was our first teacher, and I built the business around that. So absolutely is a possibility there. There are some caveats with this. You need the experience to do it. So I'd be hesitant. A lot of people come in and say, look, I know Facebook ads, I'll partner with. That's great. That's one step. But there's a lot more to building a business than just Facebook ads. I mentioned 3 primary pillars of productized education business is, well, take a level down, is fulfillment, growth, operations. If you really want to do this right, you need 3 partners. So let's say you're the teacher, the fulfillment, the person who knows how to deliver. You find somebody who knows Facebook ads, you now have the growth. Problem is no operations. And this is where everything falls. People are like, the 2 of us, we got it. And it wouldn't work if you only had fulfillment and operations either, because I'm like, product, got to deliver it. He's selling it. So without those 3 things, it doesn't work. And that's where I think a lot of people fall. So that's the shortcut, the advice that people get online. You know what? Partner up with somebody who runs the business. It's very rare to find somebody who knows how to do even 2 of those pillars. I mean, it's a skill set. I tell people like 80% of 2 of those, which means I'm great at the startup phase. I can get you from like 0 to a few million. And then at that point, you just hire somebody who's like an expert at operations and an expert at the rest of it. And that's what I do. And that's it. Yeah. Generally, when people get stuck in the low 7 figures or mid 6 figures, the low 7 figures, invariably it's because if you ask who's in charge of growing their business, the answer is simple. Like me. Who else thinks about it? No, just me. That's why you're stuck at in mid 6 figures, low 7 figures. The exact number varies depending on how much you charge. But if you've been stuck there for 2 years and ask you the question, who's in charge of growing the business, and your answer is me, that's you're about people.
Yeah, cool. I love that. So many lessons within just this one episode. Thank you so much for bringing all of it to us. And I'm excited for people to go learn more. If this is like speaking to your heart and you feel like, yeah, this is a total level up to what I've known about course creation or online education. I love that there's still a market for this. It's still growing. It's ever expanding. So thank you so much, Ray, for everything.
Kirsten, my pleasure. Happy to help.
Of course. Yes. And then where's the best place for people to connect with you, with your company, with you personally?
Absolutely. So with my company, Productized Education would probably be the best place to get in touch with me on the web. So productizededucation.com. If you want to connect with me on social media right now, I'm trying to build a YouTube channel. So that'd be kind of a lot of the stuff I talk about in videos and handouts and everything like that over there in my YouTube channel. Or connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Find me on all three.
Cool. Amazing. Thanks again so much, Ray.
Thanks. My pleasure.